I was really interested to know about your podcast and everything that you're doing for it's Menopause Day, like National
Tomorrow.
Menopause National Menopause Day.
Yeah, it's a World Menopause Day. Who
World
knew, right?
Menopause. Yeah, that's good. Okay.
Yeah, it's like World Menopause Month, World Menopause Day on the 18th.
I
So
had no idea that even was a thing, but that's
yeah,
great.
there's a thing for everything, but yes, it was declared by the International Menopause Society, IMS. So we launched last year on October 18th on World
Uh-huh.
Menopause Day as a nonprofit with over 600 subway ads in New York City that said it's not
Wow.
just in your head in both English and Spanish. And so we are a new national nonprofit raising awareness and education and advocacy around menopause so women get the information they need and the support and the healthcare they deserve. Basically, women are not getting the information they need prior to menopause. They're often in the dark, and it's a very sort of taboo, mysterious subject. And so people are sort of go into it uninformed. And what we know is that doctors actually are not trained in menopause.
Yeah, I
Very
can
few.
imagine that.
So it's
Either that or
actually
I found a doctor, a female doctor who's about, the same age. And of course she retired.
right. Yeah. So there's not a lot of doctors out there. It actually came off the curriculum in most med schools in the early 2000s at the same time that this big study came out that from
Hmm.
the WHI that was a study that basically kind of stopped hormone therapy in its tracks. But now we know actually that data has been reanalyzed and relooked at. And now we know that it's not sort of the danger that everyone was saying. So we need to sort of get women to be able to have a conversation with their doctors, their healthcare providers, and so there's an organization called NAMS, the North American Menopause Society,
Mm.
that trains doctors and physicians and nurses in menopause. And so you can find actually through our website, you can find it links to their website to find a NAMS certified practitioner.
That's great.
Yeah. So, I mean, there's, certainly more than there was, but basically we need to educate doctors. But the start is to really educate women who are going through it because they're going to then talk to their doctors and sort of put the pressure on them to get the information. You know, if
Yeah.
people are coming
It's
to them and say, hey, what's going on? What, should we talk about menopause prior? Because symptoms start 4 to 10 years prior to your last period.
mhm. Yeah, it's hard to deal with, somebody who's like 30 or 40 years old and, asking advice from them. And it's like,
Yeah.
you can't really
Yeah.
trust them. The other
Right.
thing too is that menopause has really been taboo as far as like in advertising. I mean, it's something that like they talk about everything from pubic hairs to erectile dysfunction, but menopause is not something that gets talked about at hardly at all.
Yeah. I think there's been a little bit more this past year. There's sort of been a little bit more of an awakening, but for sure, I think older women, I think there's a lot of reasons why that is. I think that women who are aging have really been sort of left out of the equation. And I mean, you also have to remember that, a couple hundred years ago, we didn't live this long. We died
Right.
in childbirth, right? So women are now living longer though. And so we're living 40, 50 years post menopause. And so we're living half our lives in this area of time, this period of time that and look, it can be an amazing time and wonderful for people,
Mhm.
but it can be a time also of a lot of symptoms, especially in that perimenopause, that late perimenopause period. There's a lot of symptoms and they can mimic other symptoms, and there's lots of different areas of the body that it is wrapped up in. So there's cardiovascular, there's bone health, there's the brain, there's the vaginal urinary symptoms, there's mental health symptoms. And those symptoms kind of they're very confusing because they affect each other. So like
Mhm.
if you don't sleep, that can affect your mood,
Right.
right? And then, but fatigue can also be a symptom of menopause. So it's one of those things that it's hard to figure out what's what. And because doctors in our country are so siloed, everyone kind of has their specialty. No one's kind of looking at the whole person. So really, women have to be their own best advocates and learn about, the stages, the symptoms. And it doesn't happen at the average age is 52 for women, but it can happen
Mhm.
a lot earlier. There's premature ovarian insufficiency, which happens, before 40. And, people can get their last period as late as their late 50s. So it's a real range, just like getting your period is a range, right? But because
Yeah.
of that, it can be really confusing and complicated for people to know what's going on.
Right. Yeah. It's amazing. I mean, there's some women who are having babies in their 50s, and it's like,
Mhm.
how the heck? You never heard of that
Yeah, that
ever
usually doesn't
happening.
happen. That does usually that's that's assisted, and yeah, it's unlikely to have baby in their 50s.
Yeah.
Usually by the time you're 52, 52 is the average age where you have your menopause is defined as that 1 year after your last menstrual period. But if it
Right.
starts again 6 months later, then you have to start the time clock all over again.
Yeah, I think I was like 55, something like that.
Oh wow,
I don't
yeah,
even
so that was
remember.
a little bit on the later side.
Yeah. Yeah,
Um,
and it's funny because I really didn't experience much in the way of, hot flashes and things like that until just recently. And now I'm like 68, and all of a sudden,
um,
oh, there's this weird hot flash. Or
wow, that's interesting.
the main thing that I had that I just absolutely hate is chin hairs. I just like
Mm,
have a
yeah.
hate relationship with that.
Right. We're going in all the wrong places, right? Um,
Yeah.
so we're actually tomorrow we have an ad going up in Times Square. We have a big ad. I can actually show it to you if you want.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, so it's right in Times Square, and we got funding from Always Discreet.
Uh-huh.
So it's a billboard basically in Times Square, and so that's what we did this year for World Menopause Month, and we're going to be posting on it, social media.
I like it's when it's never sweater
Weather,
weather.
yeah.
That's great.
But yeah, it's funny. One of our hashtags is more than hot flashes, because basically, like, it's more than hot flashes. We have a poster that, I don't know if you've been to our website, but that, has many symptoms on there. Yeah. So, I mean, there's a lot of different symptoms. And again, some of them can be really confusing. Like, my sister-in-law had heart palpitations. She went to many, many doctors and didn't get treated. And no one ever said that could be menopause. So she had tests and other things. So there's things that happen. And for example, people who have PMDD, so like the more severe version of post premenstrual syndrome, that gets worse during perimenopause.
Yeah, I've heard that from people that have had
Yeah.
the same thing.
So we do sort of these public ad campaigns, and then we have monthly menopause talks. Those are done on a platform called Hello Revel.
Oh, I'm a member of that.
Yeah. Yeah.
I
So we do
love
it on
that.
that
Yeah.
platform. And then, so those are monthly talks with doctors that people can go to virtually, and they can ask questions. And the idea is to really have physicians talk to people in a way that they can understand it, not dumb it down necessarily, but a lot of times doctors speak in medical speak,
Yeah.
and it can be confusing for people. So our talks are really geared towards the consumer, towards everyday people. And so we have those once a month. This next one on the 20th is on race and ethnicity and differences, because different racial groups experience menopause differently. So that's on the 20th. And then we're doing some special topics next month on breast cancer. And then in the future, we're going to be doing things on weight and skin, things like that. We've had things about like what is perimenopause, and we've done a whole series on hormone therapy and sort of the actual data that's come out. And so that people should really talk to their doctor about doing a risk benefit analysis,
That's
with their doctor.
exciting.
Yeah. And then we have a podcast that's dropping.
Yeah, I wanted to hear about that.
So that is my co-founder, Christine McGinnis, and she partnered up with Robin Gelfenbein, who's a comedian, and it's called Hello Menopause, and it's dropping, our trailer's dropping tomorrow. So you have to go to one of our social media. And then the first episode is launching early next month. So we have guests on there, Tamsin Fidel, who's one of them, Stacey London, Shirley Weir from Canada, to name a few. And these are real people's stories about menopause. And so it's much more about people's like storytelling. And the beginning part of it, we do person on the street. So Robin went up to people in the street and asked them questions about menopause in New York City.
That must have been fun.
There's a compilation of, sort of like a montage of people talking like menopause, like I should know more about that, or like, is that thing? So it's very funny actually.
Oh yeah, it sounds like it. Is it, and it's
Yeah.
available like on all the usual podcasts?
So it's called Hello Menopause. So the trailer's dropping tomorrow, and then the first episode and then I think it's bi-weekly after that.
Okay.
So it's dropping.
Sounds fun.
The Menopause Talks, the podcast, and then the public ad campaign. And then we're also going to be doing some advocacy work. So things like getting insurance to cover hormone therapy more than they do now.
Yeah.
Things like getting more research for women. So one of the things that we're doing tomorrow is on our website, people are going to be able to write to their members of Congress to have them support the Menopause Care Act of 2022, which will give more funding towards women in research. Because basically women were not in medical studies.
Yeah, I can imagine.
which is crazy. And so, I was actually just at the North American Menopause Society conference, and, every other line was, well, we need to study that. We need to look at that, right? Because we haven't
Yeah.
studied menopause. So there's lots of things to be done there. So we need basically, more research, more money for research for women.
Cool.
So that's
Good.
going to be starting tomorrow. Yeah.
Yeah, well, I'm excited. Thanks so much.
Our website. Thank you so much, Rebecca.